Alright, back again on Righteous Gaming YouTube channel. Had a little bit of trouble with our first video staying up, but and maybe didn't get this out as fast as we would have liked, but we're back with something else here. We're going to recap the calling and the Pro Tour in Los Angeles. I'm back again with Pierre. How you doing, Pierre?
Good, good. Feeling good. How
Alright.
are you, Zach?
Yeah, I'm doing alright. Weekend could have been better for me, but it went really well for you, but we'll get into that. Alright. So I think we'll start with the Pro Tour just because it came first. You were the only person on the team that played in the Pro Tour to not make day two. So how did your Pro Tour go, Pierre?
Yeah, it went fine. The CC, I obviously felt really good about my CC. I brought Kassai. It felt fine. But during my third game, so I was 1-1. One against a uh Katsu, and then I lost against a Azalea. I just got rolled. Nothing I could do. And then my third game I was against Tariq, and like obviously like a really really great player. Um, I had like a pretty major misplay in that game where I had two blues, one yellow, and one red in hand, like in the late-ish game, and for some reason I blocked with my two blues and kept the yellow, where I should have just kept the one of the blues, block with the yellow, pitch into gold, grab what I had ideas of what my draw would be. And like it was a big misplay on my end that I don't know if it cost me the game per se, but it tilted me enough where
Mm.
like the rest of the day didn't go well. I went 2-2 in CC, and then in draft I just had a not super great pool. I was in a good warrior seat where my right was on Guardian, Brew Guardian, and like literally all of my left was on warrior.
Dude,
Um,
I had literally the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
I love heavy drafts and I love draft in general. I guess I think heavy drafts. There's multiple ways you can play it. Like you can force, you can play flexible. I tried to play flexible, and I understood that I was in the warrior seat. But then in my second pack, I got hard cut, and then in my third pack, obviously, like the warrior pool got diluted super hard. So my deck was just like not good. I went 1-2. It is what it is. But I do think also, the tilt from CC, like I don't think it carried over to draft, but definitely I think my CC I thought I would do better. But I mean I cut back during calling.
yeah. No, for me, CC went pretty well. I lost my first round, which was sad. I lost it to Noah Clark, Darkodius on Dromai. And we sit down. I'm playing Katsu. He looks at who I'm playing. He's like, "Not like this, man. Not the first round." Dude, you have chances here. You know, like Dromai can always high roll, and he wins the die roll, goes first, pops gold. Arsenal's like really disciplined into Katsu. He doesn't attack, doesn't let me feel grave. I just do some like random crap on my turn, and then he plays Tome from Arsenal. Thinks about like what he's gonna pitch to this, like agonizes over it for like 2 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I'm losing this game already when he's thinking this hard. He pitches he pitches a CNC and something else, and I'm like, what is he gonna play? Kyloria, Necria. And I'm like, oh god, here we go. And then I don't have a popper, obviously, because our Katsu list runs zero poppers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also had no blue zero in hand. So I couldn't like Kadachi or Kylori on the snapback either. So I had to give up like both my equipment to stop the draw. And then I think I went 100 wins red bonds into the two Kylorias or something like that to just get rid of them. It was so bad. I had no arsenal and I was just like completely losing. It was a rough one. I think I got him down to like 2 or 3. But he also had like 2 D reacts on my pop off turn, which was sad. So I got a bit rolled. Other 3CC games
Yeah,
went
that's
well,
tough.
and then I just had a very similar experience to you in draft, where I had Brute and Guardian to my right, so I was feeling good about that, and I had a Brute to my left, and then there were 2 Warriors after them to the left. And it just wound up being like super awkward in pack 2. And it's also, I think this happens all the time in heavy draft, because what winds up happening is everyone picks hybrid cards early, and then no one's committed to anything. There's no signals that are ever being sent. You have no idea. It's like a crapshoot when you decide to commit, but you have to commit early enough, otherwise you have no three blocks. And if you commit wrong, you just get supremely punished. And sometimes the pack distribution can also just really punish you. So that's why heavy is not my favorite limited experience. But maybe that's just results based analysis because it just screwed me on the entire weekend. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think there's like definitely some like hindsight bias,
Yeah.
but it's like uh, I enjoy Fab Draft. I have my favorites. I do think though heavy hitters, you have enough ways to draft it. I think a lot of the comp players kind of went for forcing, like semi hard, semi committed forcing. Uh, I think that combined with like having half of the people were doing this, or at least like most of the people I was talking to did this. Then the other half like tried to stay flexible. And obviously, when you stay flexible, you pick hybrid cards, you pick cards that like are good in two-ish classes, and then that ends up messing the draft for both sides when you have half forcers, half like flex, and I don't know. It seemed like a lot of people's strategy was to force, regardless of your seat, and I think a lot of people got got destroyed because of that. Obviously, like I don't know everyone's strategy, and I think in a way a lot of people, including us, were slightly underprepared for heavy hitters draft. Um, but but I think in general, like heavy hitters draft is personally not my favorite, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, and I also think the awkward thing about heavy over like other sets where you try and stay open is like in most other sets you can stay open with like generics and pivot into
Yeah.
whatever is blatantly open. But like if you're staying open to heavy hitters and you're like between brute and warrior and there's a forcer on like brute or a forcer on warrior in the pod, it instantly means you are no longer actually staying open, which is like the most awkward thing about it.
Yeah,
At
I
least to
mean,
me.
there's like some decent generics in this set. The issue, so there's, yeah, I will say I am way more comfortable in a set where there's generics enough, or like, generics that are flexible enough that your early picks are not that committal.
Hmm.
I think in heavy hitters you have to commit really fast, and that was kind of my qualm about uprising draft as well. Like you have to commit very fast, or else your deck will be, like your deck's power level will be too diluted,
Yeah.
or even you can't even like fully get a full deck. Like that happens. I think like you have to commit by pick like 5 or 6. I think, and that's too early personally. I like sets where you don't have to be fully committed until slightly later. That's why I actually enjoyed. I Welcome to Wraith is my favorite one. Tails is not bad, and like I think Outsiders was also great about that. You don't
Yeah.
have to be
I
super committed.
I really liked Outsiders. I think Outsiders did hybrid the best, but I think that the reason Outsiders was so good to me was it had interaction in like both parts of the game, right? Like you had all these D reacts that did things, and you had to be like cautious with your attack reactions because you could get punished with like Blood Rot Trap and all
Yeah.
these other like things. Whereas in Heavy, it's like the interaction is primarily given to Warrior with attack reacts, and your interaction to combat them is really awkward because it's like reinforce the line, rally the rear guard, which both require you to block with attacks, which punish you. So it's like, here's my way to combat the interaction. If they don't have interaction, I've just played poorly, you know. So
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
kind of
I,
weird.
I think the gameplay is fine. I actually really enjoy heavy draft game, or like just limited gameplay. Um, yeah, I just think it's like the drafting process for me like doesn't quite tick.
Hmm.
But it might just be personal preference. I need to think about it a little more, ponder on it. But I don't think any events in the future, uh, between now and Misval are gonna be, uh, including heavy draft, or at least not near us. So you know, it'll be mostly for casual armories.
Yeah, there
We'll
might be like
see at
a
Nats about Misval.
Yeah, it might be like a calling or a battle harden or something, but there's definitely no PQs or anything that are limited.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can
Yeah,
kind of leave that one.
the only one that I'm going to before Nats is Montreal, and Montreal I think is CC. I mean, if it's draft or limited, I'll still go, but it's CC. I think it's CC. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any big ones, at least for any of the teammates. That is limited.
All right. Well, that was us complaining about why we didn't do well in PT, but we did
Yeah,
have some people actually do well in the Pro Tour.
yeah,
Yeah. So Corey and Porter both did better
This was
than
right
us. Corey actually wound up in top 64. He was also on Kassai. A lot of credit to him when we get to the Kassai deck tech later about solving the Dromai matchup specifically. He put a lot of work into that, and I think that's part of why he did so well.
Yeah, Corey was so obviously like our Kassai was an evolution of where we were in Hartford. Um, Corey helped me a lot in like fleshing out what we wanted out of this PT list, and we had other teammates like Brendan, Jeremiah that helped, but Corey basically alone figured out the Dromai matchup, and it was big. We'll talk about it, but we were X1 into Dromai the entire weekend for the entire team. It was really, really good, and I think the Dromai matchup successes has to go to him.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then obviously Porter did really well. Unluckily, got just out of money, but still very good. He was on Levaya. Very, very strong deck. He had a really good day one at 5-2, but I think his draft day two didn't go too well. Um, and that kind of made him spiral out.
Yeah, I think he was 5-2 heading into day 2, right?
Yeah, it was 5-2. Both
yeah.
Corey and Porter were 5-2 on day one.
Yeah.
And then Tyler, also technically day 2, he was at 4-3 after day 1. But he was not super comfortable in draft, so he opted to go to the calling, just drop. At 4-3 after day 1, you're not live for top 8 anyways. And it's gonna be hard to make top 32 at that point also. So especially if you're not comfortable in draft, I think it was the right move to go to calling.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable in draft for sure, but you're definitely live for top 32. You just need to X.
You are.
You just need to X2, I think. Even we'll probably still top 32 because most X5s make it.
I mean, X with those tiebreakers might be X1, but yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think at 4-3 you have to be quite comfortable in draft, and then because especially if your X2 losses are like early.
Yeah, no. If you do what I did, if you do what I did and commit to playing day 2 and then immediately 0-2 draft, then you can drop. You will not be live for top 64 even. But yeah, no.
And then you had the same experience, right? Like where you went 4-3 day 1.
Yeah.
But you actually wanted to play out the PT, but
well, I was like
X2 in draft and
yeah, no. Well, it's so weird because my day 2 draft was the worst experience I've ever had playing heavy draft, by far. So my first game of day 2, I had like a pretty good warrior deck actually. It was like a 2 warrior pod, and I was like really happy with my deck. I play against what's his name? Sorry, Kissel, yeah, the card advantage player.
Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob Kissel.
Yeah.
And my first 4 hands are all red, and then my next 2 hands are all blue. I was like, this is a tragedy. I was literally shuffling the deck for like 5 minutes, and then I handed it to him, and he shuffled it too. We were like, I've never seen this before. This is crazy. So yeah, no, that was tragic. And then my next round opponent had 4 red wild rides. And the reason he had lost the round before is that he had drawn, discarded a non-attack, and IP3'd himself. So, like, he had a cracked deck that I could not possibly beat. And I was like, this is so unfortunate. How could this happen? My deck was, like, really good. I just could not win. And by then I was out of the money, so I just dropped and played side events. But I did get, from side events, this Dromai Wall Scroll that I have not hung up yet. So, we nice. Take what we can get, It was an alright weekend. I think I went, like, X1 in CC. Like 9-1, 10-1 on CC on the weekend. So I mean, I felt like good. Maybe if I played the calling, I think I would have done much better. But that's hindsight. Yeah.
Yeah, we were really well prepped, I think, for CC in general. Like I think draft is kind of uh what we had issues with. I think it's both a lack of preparation, but also I think in general, yeah, it was a lack of preparation, I think. But heavy draft was I don't think like none of us like are passionate about heavy draft, and
I
that
I
I
have a
think that also
passionate disdain
showed.
for it.
Yeah, I mean I don't hate it, but again,
Well,
I think
it's
it's just
dude, it's
like
so
none of
weird.
us
I don't know
were
how
like
this
super into it.
I don't know how this keeps happening, but like every draft format that I like despise are the ones that I always win stuff in. Like Bright Lights, I hated the draft format and I won like 2 PQs. Then Heavy Draft I hate and I make it to the finals and like split with Tyler or whatever. And I'm like I'm feeling good about this, you know? Like I don't like it, but I can like perform in it. And then I go to Pro Tour and I just cannot perform in it.
So yeah, I mean we did a
You
we did a
know?
lot of practice on draft,
Yeah.
but I think maybe our approach was wrong. None of us forced, which like sounds weird to say, like yeah, force, or like so like semi-force, where like you try to guess your seat from the first few picks and then just force. But it's like I don't know. Our approach was wrong. I think a lot of us wanted to stay flexible, and we didn't quite prepare to face so much forcing. I mean, personally, that was my experience, and some of our other teammates' experience. So, I mean, that it's all experience.
Yep.
But yeah, I think draft is what we need to work on the most.
All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up thoughts on Pro Tour. We can get into the
Yeah,
calling.
yeah.
I
The
did.
calling is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
easy peasy, right?
yeah.
It's like I think Tyler went 5-3, lost to two Azaleas, and I can't remember what the third deck was. I mean,
He said it was
he was on
Redline
Katsu.
Dromai.
Yeah. He was on Katsu. Uh, yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. I think like he got kind of yeah. He had a really good Katsu deck. I just don't know. Like Azalea was a deck that I wasn't super expecting, and there were definitely more of them than I expected. And I think Tyler was in the same boat, so we didn't have that much Azalea tech, and I
Well,
think that hurt
it's
him.
really funny actually because I was working on the deck with him because I was also on Katsu, and I kept talking about Warmongers, and he kept trying to convince me to cut Warmongers. Because he's like, we aren't going to see that many Azaleas, you know. If we see one, whatever, it's not going to be that bad. And I was like, we have the sideboard space for Warmongers diplomacy, man. It'll be okay. And we wound up settling on two, and I think we had two D reacts and one or two hold the line. I forget. But yeah, we were cutting a lot of Azalea attack to try and make room elsewhere, and I think that kind of came back to bite him a little bit.
Yeah, I think
But that'll
so.
happen, you
We
know.
That Gatsu list was kind of tech to have not really strong, but like a decent Victor matchup, because that was like one of the matchups that we saw potential in, like putting in polarizing in our favor for that Katsu list. Like I think it was like a meta call where like you either have a not great Victor matchup and you have decent odds in Azalea, like at least you have some more space, or you have a really really bad Azalea matchup and you like are slightly favored into Victor. And I think like that's kind of what got around to like hit him, is like he chose the latter and saw
I
like one Victor the entire weekend. Like
I
it's
think
still
that
really
I think that our local meta kind of
unlucky.
psyoped us a little bit because like
Yeah.
we had like Taylor Crawford and all those guys who were just on Victor like all of RTN season, and then you get the Pro Tour and obviously everybody saw like Taylor wasn't even on Victor; he was on Katsu for Pro Tour and calling.
Yeah, for
It's
you
like,
guys in NC, South Carolina, North Carolina, that area was heavy Victor.
yeah,
I mean, I think there was like two Victors in New England. Like,
yeah.
New England had no Victors. But also, I mean, a lot of like Hong Kong players and Singapore players were on Victor. Like, the Victor was still a represented deck. I think he got like kind of nuked on his Jame luck, to be honest.
Mm.
Like he saw way more Azaleas than he saw Victors. I think he saw one Victor the entire weekend. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's a big tournament. And then Jeremiah, I think, went X3. I mean, I think he was on Kassai, but I don't think I don't have like the latest news about his tournament, but it seemed like he thought he needed more reps.
Yeah,
Like
talking to him
Kassai is
between rounds,
a
that's what he told me. Is that he's like, I was too inexperienced on the deck, and I like made some
yeah.
playing mistakes. But I think
Kassai
he
is
like
like
recognized what he did wrong most of the time.
yeah. Yeah, I think Kassai is one of those decks that seem really easy to play, but the matchups all play differently. So it's like a you needed reps and like experience on the deck, and I think like that's what he was missing. Um, yeah, that's tough. And then obviously I went 11-2. I went 7-1 on day one and 4-1 on day two. I lost in top eight, but we take those.
Yeah,
I
I bet
think
you do, man. Like, come on.
yeah, because I mean, it's still like it's great to top eight. But you're so close and you don't
Mhm.
win. It's still tough. Uh, but it's awesome still. Very proud of myself, but also the team. Like there's a lot of team effort behind that. So I was very proud of our Kassai deck, and obviously we're about to show you, but uh, our Kassai deck uh, felt really good. It kind of feels bad we solved the Jomai matchup like a week before she leaves, but it's fine. We'll talk about like what changes we made since Hartford, kind of like the mindset shift, and also, possibly like in broad strokes what we think could change after Jomai allows. But yeah, I think overall the day like the team had a decent LA weekend. Like we had 5 out of 6 people day two PT, which is like very good. We had one top 64, so in the PT, which is obviously money, and then 1/3 of us day two calling, and that was me top eighting. Like our CC decks were actually really good. I was pretty proud of our CC prep. We just have to uh, go harder on draft and deeper on draft next time for Nats.
All right, so back in with the deck tech here. Right away, you can probably notice something a little bit different here in the equipment suite. We no longer have 2 sabers, and of course, we have this Arcanite Skullcap here, Pierre. So you want to take us through what this is here for and why we maybe don't have other hats in that people might expect.
Yeah, so in general, like when we're gonna compare this list, we're gonna compare it to Hartford, which was our last deck tech. In our Hartford that we had Dominion as our main uh, headpiece. We realized that the more we played the list, the more we were able to gain experience about when to get golds, and corollary of that was we were getting gold more like easier. So we realized Dominion was kind of extra, and we didn't really have you know we were missing that block against some of the decks. Where we need to have that equipment block. So Skullcap was like it was either Skullcap, Crown of Providence, right? And Crown of Providence, the thing is, it's great in two matchups that uh where you need like a spike of block using your arsenal. The issue in Kassai is that like you or at least the way this deck plays, we don't ever really arsenal anything that is either not a D-React or a go against source or whatever. Like every arsenal is very usable, and in general, you kind of want to play it because if it's a go again, you recycle Dynamo, or if it's D-React, you get more value out of using it than using a Crown of Province recycle. So like Arcanite Skullcap had that the same two block as Crown of Providence, but also had the kind of played into the deck where like oftentimes as Kassai you kind of are lower on life early in the matchups where you run Dominion, and so like Skullcap kind of plays into that the same way Heart of Findle does, and we just realized okay Skullcap is actually pretty decent. Like it's you just start with 3 more life in most times. Like sometimes sure you only use the two block once and then you're above on life or something. But like oftentimes you get the full value of it and you don't miss Providence just because of what your arsenal targets are.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like as Kassai, like you said, there's no like bad Arsenal cards. Like there's no card in the
I mean a
deck that you're
blue,
like,
right?
well,
Like
yeah, but like
there's
generally speaking, if you have blues in hand, you just pitch them to Grains or something, right? Like you don't generally get stuck with extra blues very
yeah,
often.
in general you have a D-react or you have a go again, like or sometimes you obviously you have like a attack reaction, but in general like all of these things you want to keep.
Yeah.
Like you want to keep to build your next turn cycle or like you know just you get the most value out of keeping those rather than a random filter. And like sure cop can filter your hand, but that's like basically a two block sink. Like it's not insane. And Kasai, like this deck bricks extremely little, so it's not, especially when you're disciplined about recycling your vigor and stuff,
Mm.
you're almost never resource starved. Your go agains, you just have so many of them. Like I just never have had issues,
Yeah,
to
and
be
it's also
honest.
like the only time you ever brick, it's like you drew all reds or something like this, and you don't have any vigor.
Which like
And well,
yeah,
the thing is, even then, like you're kind of okay just like giving the hand. Like you don't really want
and
to give
yeah,
up your like on-demand equipment block to like maybe resource fix this hand. It's not like what Kasai's trying to do. So I don't even think that Cop really fixes your hand in ways you want because you're like giving up damage to try and fix it. It's like not
yeah. I
what
mean,
your goal is.
when you draw all reds, it's like kind of fine to just. Obviously, if you have an arsenal, it's slightly different, but blocking 9 arsenaling is like very fine.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the upside of cop is very minimal with this deck in general. I mean, one of the biggest reasons people run cop is because you can kind of have a really free arsenal most of the game, and then until you use cop, and that's like an extra 3 block or like an extra card to attack with. But like Kassai doesn't really play into that at all. The way you arsenal things, so it just didn't feel quite right. And Skullcap just had that extra value. Now Skullcap played decent. We ran it mostly into Azalea, Victor, and Bravo. Um, I saw no Bravo, so I can't comment. But in Victor, uh, I lost my 13th round uh, of the calling against a Victor, and I lost my top 8 against Dennis Zhang on Victor. I think it's it was fine. The issue I saw with it is that actually kind of do want Dominion into the more blocky Victors. Like if the Victor, there's a lot of ways the Victor can play on the same deck. Victor can either go very mid-range into you, which Skullcap is great against. Um, the Victor can also just like fully commit to blocking your own hits and like make you struggle to throw things together. And when they're playing like this, Dominion is very nice because you're at most going to get one, maybe two golds, and raise is an important part of winning this matchup. There's some like into mid-range victors, you don't always need raise. Like actually, you're completely fine playing value game, and if you get raise, like you have to threaten raise and you have to threaten blood on your hands, obviously. But uh, into like a more fatiguey slash blocky victor, Dominion would have been very good. Um, yeah, I think I might keep the card in. I might have Dominion. I'm not sure yet. We'll see.
Hmm.
But it did the job. It was fine into the matchups we needed it for. I just kind of missed Dominion.
Yeah. So maybe those are some ways you can tailor it to your local meta. If your victors are more aggro, you can stick with Skullcap. If they're more fatigue-focused Guardians, maybe keeping with Dominion is better. But that's one change we made for Pro Tour. Another
Yep.
card that we like briefly talked about in the last video, but wasn't in our list, but is now, is Yellow Slice. I think that's the
Mm.
next change here on the list. I think that like the reason that I heard from you guys anyway was that it was just more adaptable than things like
Yeah.
that all you got or something like that just blocked three.
Yeah. I mean that's basically the reason. Like, it's one of the most flexible yellows in this deck, basically ever. Like, I mean, maybe Blade Runner run through or like extremely flexible. They still block 3. They're go against. But I mean, outside of that, it's you compare this to Daoyuga, right? Like slice and dice. Um, when you draw it when you have tempo, it's very usable. It's a 0 for 3 like yellow, which is insane. Um, it's when you block it, when you draw it and you want to block, like it's a 0 for 3 block yellow. You take that. Like it's very flexible and it allows. And that kind of goes into the mindset of how we wanted to play uh, uh, Kassai for Pro Tour. Is in Hartford we were very control oriented, like block a lot, get value, have threatening on hits, and have commanding performance to push them through, stuff like that. It was also like a much more open meta, like we didn't. It was the first weekend of heavy hitters, but now that the meta was kind of figured out, we knew what the top decks were. Like we wanted the deck to be way more flexible. One of the main skills I think with Kassai is adapting throughout the game, like understanding your outs on like a macro scale, having solid pitching skills, pitch stacking skills, like. But I think the macro skills of like understanding where you're in the game, where your outs are, how you need to play to these outs, how you set them up, are very very important. And Slice and Dice plays heavily into that, where it's just like it's the same value whether you block with it or use it. Um, and it's a 0 for 3 yellow. Like 0 for 3 is basically on rate, and it's a little more. It's a little better than a 0 for 3 because it's split damage. So like the breakpoints are kind of mean. So like it's a great card. I think it's what differentiates the list in terms of like mindset between Hartford and this list.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because I mean, like the other yellows that we were talking about that like didn't make it were like really troll. Like we were talking about like yellow sync for a while. We were talking about like
so the funny story. So I know you ran yellow sync at like a case event or something.
Dude, I ran yellow sync at a case event that I top aided.
Yeah, and I mean you still dominated that. That's pretty nuts. Yellow sync is troll. Like we were testing it, and Zach was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it to the case event," and ever since then, Taylor Crawford, he's a ex-local to me, now local to Zach. Taylor Crawford just trolls me all the time about Yellow Sync. Like it's so annoying. But it's like that's
welcome.
your fault, Zach. That's your fault.
Yeah, you're welcome, man.
Yeah,
you have fun with that
I'm
one.
like we were before Pro Tour. We were discussing a lot about how he thinks Kassai is bad and I think Victor is not great, and like he would just end every argument with Yellow Sync and nothing else, and I'd be like, okay, I can't deny.
Well, so the thing is with Yellow Sync was like, at the time I was like, okay, that all you got isn't feeling great. I want to pivot away from this. What's something that like might be better than that all you got? I was like, well, this is a yellow D-React that maybe fixes my hand, that might be slightly better, so I'll play Yellow Sync.
yeah. It was your idea. Yeah, it was interesting.
No, it was maybe not the best idea.
We were off that very quickly after that weekend. Yeah. A little bit of lore.
Yeah, okay, let's see. What else actually made the cut here that's different? I mean,
two take on the chins.
I guess, yeah, we're down to 2 take it on the chin.
Yeah, that's just a preference thing. Like, I love take on the chin. I think it's like MVP.
I think it's like my favorite card from heavy hitters, unironically.
Yeah, it's insane. The issue is when you draw 2, you just want to evaporate into the air. It's like not good at all when you see 2. It's like just a 2 block. Yeah. Like you have to kind of think about, okay, now I actually need to rotate my arsenal. Like I have to play to that. Like it's very restrictive in your play. So that's why I'm saying it's like you just want to evaporate. It's just like you don't even want to think about having 2 in your hand. It's like, and that's why I have only 2 in the list. I think it's a very preference thing about having 2 or 3. Like whether you're I don't know, it's like a playstyle thing. I just didn't want to deal with having 2 in my hand ever. And like, I mean, I think one example of seeing how how not great it can be is I think one of the games Max Klein, I think actually in the finals, he had a hand with 2 take on the chin, and he like literally just IPs himself. Like it's not
Oof.
Or I don't know if it was the final or if it was I can't remember. But I remember seeing that on stream. I was like, "Yep, that's why we don't have three." Like it's a great card, but having two in your hand is just so feels bad.
Hmm.
So but I'm not gonna be like, you know, against you running two or you running three. It's like, you know, it's not. That's a personal preference thing. It's just my personal preference is not drawing two ever. The issue is you are conceding a little bit of stock, like very little bit of stock into Kano, but also this list we were like, yeah, if we see Kano, we just like, we shake their hand and we go have
What do
lunch.
you mean you beat
Like,
a Kano?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, if people
yeah.
haven't seen the Majin Bay video, one of the rounds he conceded was to Pierre. So
Yeah, so I can't remember how many rounds he was out. I think he was very
it was
sick.
2 or 3.
We talked about it after top A, and I think he was like, well, just go watch his video. He talks about
Dude,
it,
that's a
but
great video, man.
I
If
think
people don't watch Majin Bay's like recap videos, they're all bangers.
yeah, a few videos, sorry, a few rounds he was out, and one of them was against me. I think that round didn't matter to me because I think I was already locked by then, but it was still very funny. Like I literally I'm out of the tables, like outside of the calling tables. I see Majin Bay on my gem. I'm like, okay, I guess I just like lose. Like I'm already
Yeah.
locked, but I just like lose seeding, and he just arrives and he's like. And the judge is like, "Yeah, your opponent's not showing up." I was okay. I'll take it, I guess. Like, yeah. I mean, obviously, I feel really bad for Imagine, but
I mean, he still made finals,
that,
man. You know, it's
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
and he's
no,
okay.
obviously,
So we can joke about it afterwards. It would be a
yeah,
different
yeah,
story if it
exactly,
didn't turn out okay.
exactly. It was kind of it felt bad at the time. Uh, it didn't matter. I don't think the game mattered anyways, but it was still very funny.
I mean, I'm sure like breakers for somebody it might have, but like, what are
Yeah,
you gonna do? You know, like life
I don't think it mattered
happens.
for either of us. I think both of us just needed one win. Uh, or like there were 3 rounds left after that game, or like it was no, there were 2 rounds left after this game, and either of us needed one win,
Yeah.
and like I went 11-2, he went I can't remember, but I mean he was I think top 4 seeds. Like that game didn't matter
Yeah, I
for
think he was
either of
like
us.
undefeated before that round or something. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it didn't matter
yeah,
at all, but it was funny.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean our direction was that we either have sideboard cards that help against Kano, take us from 10% win to like 30%, and dedicate maybe 3 sideboard slots or 4 sideboard slots to it, or we have sideboard slots that we prioritize against Dromai, obviously, and the rest is like to make us 50% or better into everything else. And EV wise, it was just better for us to dedicate those sideboard slots to stuff like response and we'll see leader, fate foreseen. Like we had, it was just a design decision that we had with Corey of like, do we just sack Kano to make everything else at least 50% or better, or do we, take some losses or like have slightly less good matchups everywhere else, but make Kano like basically go from 10% to 30%, and it was GEV was just not there. So we just went into the tournament hoping we'd only see one Kano um, the entire tournament, because also Kano is like a specialist deck, right? So you're not expecting many like really good Kanos to be there.
well, and
Obviously
if
Imagine
you
and like
pair a
Peter
Kano,
Badminton and
you're also
stuff,
like
but
expecting they're a good Kano, right? And that thirty
right,
percent is
exactly.
probably
It's
not
like
even 30%. It's probably lower. So it's
exactly
like,
like there's a
you know,
lot of things that yeah, I mean it's just it is what it is. Like the deck's not good into Kano, we just take our loss and move on.
yeah.
And I think that was a correct choice. But there's some ways you can beat Kano. I think like if you go on Crown of Dominion AB tool and like try to play for a quick raise and like apply pressure early, I think that's like how you beat him. I mean, it's a matchup that, to be honest, we just kind of sacked. So, but there's ways you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, that's about our Kano matchup. The rest of the list, I think a lot of it is the same. Like the core engine, obviously, like Blade Runners,
I
Blood on
think
Our
I
Hands,
think the literal
Raisin
only
Army.
other card that's different from main board is Precision Press, which is in
Yeah,
over what that all you, not that all you got. This round's on me. I
it
think
was
is what
over
it was
this rounds on
originally.
me. I mean, in Hartford, we even said then, like, yeah, this runs on me is just like, we didn't know what to expect for the meta, so we wanted to be prepared for everything. This runs on me was just anti-ninja, or anti-fi and anti-mech. But it's like, okay, uh, after the trolling of Hartford, we just, like, put an actual card there, and Precision Press is like a go again blue. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I
Yeah,
don't know,
it's
it's a
just
must-have, to be
if you
honest.
get into like fatigue late game, it's just strictly better. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the thing about that all you got, or I keep saying that all you got. This round's on me. Is that like if you wind up in these like really grindy warrior mirrors, all it does is say you have one less card in deck. So
Yeah,
like
I mean, also this rounds
it's
on me is just like you almost never want to play it,
yeah, exactly.
unless it's like fire mech or like Katsu even sometimes. But even then, it's like okay, you know, it's value sure, but it's like it's not great. It doesn't
Yeah,
help any other
it was not great.
matchups, and having a blue go again just like helps the consistency of the list that much. So I don't know. It's just yeah, it was a easy switch
In the
after
right
Hartford.
meta, it might come back, but probably not anytime soon.
Yeah, and then also one big thing is we went to three nourishings.
Yeah, we
Um,
can get to the sideboard here.
well, it's not
Oh,
even
is it? It's
sideboard.
up here.
Like,
Yeah, it's up here.
yeah,
Okay.
it's just because nourishing is like a really good out late game,
Hmm.
and we realized that,
Well, you realized that everybody else was on three. You were the one who cut one
yeah,
before.
I cut one. I cut one in Hartford, just because it didn't quite fit with how the list worked then. I think because we are a lot more flexible mid-range E type deck now, the third nourishing helps a lot. Like it doesn't really hurt to just like, you know, play it and like not recycle Dynamo, just for that turn. Like you get your value back. The dominate is also extremely good late game. So like one of the outs that I set up in a lot of slower games this last weekend was uh, just pitching and nourishing, just pitch stacking and nourishing. What's even better is pitch stacking and nourishing on a blood on our hands. So actually, like off of blue and blood on our hands, you just pitch one into gold. Now you have a nourishing, and you just, you know, most of the time you're gonna have a vigor floating, so you get to do blood on hands nourishing to end the game, or even just like a nourishing end of the game on two cards is very strong. So like it having the third one doesn't really hurt. It's at worst it's a block three, but a lot of times you're gonna have the space to pitch stack it. Like it's pretty good.
Yeah, and like if you're really down bad for a way to end the game, you can also fatal engagement this thing and go for like
Yeah,
nine dominate. Like
yeah, that's a pretty funny interaction. It doesn't ever happen. I think it happened to me once, or like I had the opportunity to do it once in Hartford. Sorry, not in Hartford, in LA. Uh, but that was like a one-off. Like I just had tempo, and that, it was like the only thing I could really do was to, it was end game. So I had to send Nourishing Dominate. He had the three block and sync or whatever, and I was able to do it. But it was like, it was literally because I drew that hand, like two
yeah,
blues and the nourishing and the
we have
like some
CNC
other
pummel
card.
at home, you know. Like
It's like not pummel though, but yeah,
yeah, I know it's way worse. But
but yeah,
it is an interaction that you can do.
it's an interaction. It's a funny interaction. Nourishing goes to three because just how flexible and uh, like it's still a very strong card
Hmm.
in a banished deck. The difference as well uh is
I mean,
-3 that all you got main board. Like
yeah,
that just becomes a slice and dice yellow.
yeah, and then we have the two in the sideboard for matchups where it's applicable, like Warrior Mirror. It's good. Katsu, obviously. Fi if you run into one, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Mech is also decent actually.
Yeah, for
But yeah,
pistol.
there's a good bit of decks that it's good against. It's also like a 3 block yellow react, so into warrior it's very good. Yeah, it's just like a good card with upside in some matchups. The other thing, just talking about the warrior mirror, one of the biggest things we have for the warrior mirror is the Iron Song response in sideboard. Uh, that's extra reacts that you get, to push on hits. You it's good against warrior, it's good against guardian, it's good against kind of mid range. Assassin also you play that into. It's just an extra 0 for 3 pump into decks that you expect to block. It's not gonna be played against ninja or mech or anything, but it's gonna be, or maybe max. But yeah, it's not bad. Uh, 0 for 3 pushes on hits. You take that.
Yeah, I mean it's just like a good mix-up, right? Like a lot of the times, like guardians and people like that are gonna be like really expecting to on the turns they have to deny gold, like lightly block the first swing and heavily block the second. And then you can just like mix up with this and just like get a gold off pumping the first attack that, or you can get rid of the react and then pump the second attack and they don't have to react for it anymore.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, that's a huge thing you're saying is like being able to pump the first attack is actually massive because a lot of the times, you're pushing on hits through slice and dice. Now do you have six or stuff like that? Like that breakpoint on saber, because oftentimes on slice and dice you go, saber into hot streak because the saber bumps to 4 if blocked with the
hmm.
slice and dice. And being able to pump that first one, they have to use their like 1 block armor and a 3 block. It's just like very, very good to have that flexibility with that card. Obviously, they have 2 block from hand, but into matchups where you're expecting that, it's just a 0 for 3. It's just like in the swing you can play on any saber or on any sword.
Yeah. We also have new this time. I don't think we were on Outland Skirmish at the time last time, right?
Yeah, Outland Skirmish is a card that we were kind of against in Hartford because the list was a lot more controlled then. We didn't really want that much corporate gen because we felt like that was not going towards our mindset. Again, this list right now is a lot more flexible. Like we want to have a flexible game plans through the game. Outland Skirmish allows for that. If the opponent, it's a 0 for 3 at the worst, right? But if the opponent lets it hit, it's a 0 for 5 because the copper generally is worth 2 value on Blood on hands turns. So it's a 0 for 5 on hit. Uh, it's it's flexible where like it can play into kind of that control slash annoying mid range uh, side of some matchups where you play it and now the opponent has to respect it and has to make a decision. Hey, do I block the first swing or the second swing, um, or both? A lot of the times, what will end up happening is you send the first hot streak for 2, they take it, give it go again, and now on the second swing you play the Outland Skirmish, and now the Outland Skirmish is bumps the second sword for like 3, so it goes for either 7 or 8. Now the opponent has to make a decision. Okay, I already took 2 damage. Um, do I want to let him have that copper? It's highly dependent on the correct decision. Is highly dependent on the matchup, on where in the game you are, but it presents this decision point um, to the opponent. Whether you play as your first thing before the first sword, or you play between the swords, like there's different ways you play it in different matchups, in different states of the matchup. It depends on a lot of things, but it's a very flexible card, and it's a 0 for 3, potentially 0 for 5.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add, and like the reason this is here and things like commanding performance are not, is that this card is 0, and like you said, it's so much
Yeah,
more flexible. Because the issue we always
yeah,
had with commanding performance is like if you don't have a vigor, this card is super dead. Like you cannot play it unless you're keeping like 3 cards, which isn't exactly what you want to be doing as Kassai. You generally want to be keeping like 2 card hands, maybe 3 if you have like a good card like Slice and Dice or something like that. But again,
Outland
that costs
Skirmish. Yeah,
0. So, if you keep Outland Skirmish, you can just play this on a 3 card hand. It's totally fine. Whereas you can't do that with something like Commanding Performance or, Red Precision Press or Stroke of Foresight. Any of these, like, 1 cost things that people were, like, trying to run for a while there. Uh,
yeah,
this is easier to play, which makes it more flexible.
yeah. It's also, and we're gonna talk about it, but it's the same reason as to why we cut prides.
Yeah.
Like the 1 cost is actually hurts the consistency of your turn cycles a lot. Between uh, generally in Kassai, your turn is lean on one blue, and you go sword swing, go against sword swing. That's kind of like your bread and butter ideal average play. The issue with anything outside of that cost curve is you're gonna have to either use your vigor, or you're gonna have to, or your floating resource from vigor, or you're gonna have to pitch another card. Like that never feels good. You want to have that value defensively or offensively, ideally. So it's not the one cost is like really really limited. Like it's basically only Blade Runners right now in our list that has that, and I'm pretty sure it's the only thing that has that. Either Blade Runners like or any Guigans, and it's just not. It feels wrong whenever you pay that one for anything else.
Mhm.
So yeah, you bring up a good point where like stuff like commanding performance and other things are missing from this list, but it's a big reason for that is because they don't fit you know the ideal resource curve.
Yeah.
It makes the cost curve fall out of balance a little bit.
All right. And then I think the only other things that are new are like obviously the poppers for Dromai, and then I guess Fate Foreseen along with Sync now is new here as well. I think we just added this because there's like a lot of warrior in the meta and stuff like that. We want more reacts for, or what was like the general thought process?
Yeah, so obviously in Hartford we were on a springboard somersault. It's a 0 for 2 yellow react. If from Arsenal, it's a 0 for 4. That played with the control list a lot better because we were able to, in kind of most matchups, we were able to, take it slower, Arsenal, make sure we have full value out of that. The issue is, as the meta developed into a very aggro, brute kind of thing, where our KO was the top deck, and then, we had some other matchups that didn't quite leave you that space. And we realized it started being clunky and like where we wanted to be flexible, that card was kind of against that. So yes, it was a yellow, most of the time block 4. Um, Sometimes you just want to play it from hand, or sometimes you just want to have the value when you can have it. It's the 0 for 4 is what mattered the most, and so Fate Foreseen just kind of uh, goes into that slot a lot better, especially as you become more experienced with the list, more disciplined with when you trigger Kassai. You don't really miss the lacking yellows, and then Fate Foreseen kind of also, and that's I think very underrated. Is it does play into your drawing mechanic a lot, where you draw a lot. In some matchups, not every matchup is raise, and you're gonna use your gold for card advantage, and knowing what you're drawing into is super huge. Or cycling a card you don't want to draw into is huge. Fate Foreseen plays into that. Obviously, we don't run 3, so it's not super consistent. But when it does align, like Fate Foreseen does help.
Mhm.
So we were off Somersault, I think, quite fast after Hartford when we realized we wanted to be more flexible, etc.
Yeah, and I think that like the meta, like everything got faster, right? Like even Victor
Yep.
started playing like out muscle and all these like aggro plans. It's just like this is just a bit too slow now. Like for the open
Yep.
meta, it was fine, but now it's just not really tenable.
What ended up happening, right, is that we were also running above 64 in sorry, not 64, above 60
Yeah,
in Hartford for a lot of matchups, and so it kind of helped with the resource curve to have a yellow, but also not really because you still want to just pitch a blue.
yeah,
So it just was kind of like it had a mission that it wasn't fully accomplishing, and when you do get it off, it's really good, but when you don't, it's a 0 for 2 block. Like 2 blocks are like really not.
yeah. We
That's
talked
like
about that with
my
like take it
least
on the
favorite
chin
thing.
too, right? Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
Springboard
Basically, it's the
is
same logic as take
yeah.
on the
It's like
chin.
halfway between two identities, right? It's like almost a good enough pitch card, and it's like almost a good enough block card, but it's
Yeah. I
not
mean,
quite good enough at
if the meta
either.
was slower,
Yeah.
if the meta was slower than Somersault's D's, the issue is that a lot of decks can just kind of aggro, or not aggro, but they can apply pressure very fast
Hmm.
right now, and so you don't want that possible hindrance. So it's Fate for Seems just a 0 for 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Value.
And then finally, things that changed with the list: the sideboard poppers. So now there are only two CNCs, We've moved to 3 down and dirties and 3 yellow finals. And this is our Dromai plan now. We no longer have prides for Dromai. It's just we're playing 11 poppers. So,
Yeah. So the and I wished we had Corey with us to discuss this, but Corey kind of realized, and like it seems dumb when presented like this, but it was kind of he unlocked our like third eye basically,
yeah.
where like he was like, guys, what if we just like go face at Dromai and then we want to block with at least one card every turn, so why not just like have a aggro plan into we sideboard out defensive cards, and then whenever we put like 10, 12 poppers so that whenever we would want to block, we just have a popper to block with. And then if we draw 2 poppers, then we have a down and dirty, which is like really good to stop chroma. And like it was presented very simply, right? And like when talking about it now, it's like very simple. But it was kind of huge for us when you realized, okay, yeah, actually that works a lot. We have to concede a lot of sideboard, but also like if we can make Dromai favored, then like that's insane for us.
Well,
And
it's funny
you
because a
know,
lot of those cards wound up working out elsewhere anyway. Like CNC, we were already running into Brute and stuff like that. We were already running Nourishing, and then it wound up being that like the Victor plan started pivoting to like Outmuscle, and we're like suddenly we want poppers for this matchup too. Weirdly,
No, so
so
we
it's
never
like
actually ran into Victor. Like we never ran any of these into Victor, but I was talking with Taylor and like I was telling him, yeah, I have 11 poppers. Like you don't want the smoke, don't run out wrestling to me, boss. But yeah, yeah. I mean, it was possible, I guess. The
yeah.
down and dirty was very very good. Uh, Obviously some of those side we don't run all of those poppers into Prism, but down and dirty obviously and CNC. I don't think we ended up running fine those fighting spirit into Prism, but having that popper density also helps outside. And obviously having 3 main board through Nourishing is huge. Command and Conquer is for brutes mostly. Ninja, stuff that doesn't really want to always block. I mean obviously brute can block, but CNC has the upside of shredding armor into brutes. That's the main issue. So yeah, CNC just like was decent into those matchups. We never wanted to run 3 because then that starts to compete with the Nourishing, where like you draw too many attacks. But yeah, we have 3 down and dirties because that's like the best popper into Dromai. Um, Finals Fighting Sphere was at 3 to like make the so it's interesting. We run those yellow finals because it makes our ability to Kassai trigger higher, so we can filter out the attack actions from graveyard.
Hmm.
So Nourishings are live just in case. Because Nourishing is a decent endgame into Dromai, where like she starts to have board, and maybe you're like running out of poppers and you're going face, and you kind of just need that out, and that sometimes is in. But again, like we even run AB1 into Dromai. Like we were kind of just on the our plan was like, yeah, we take out your arcane win con, right? Like you can't chip us down with the arcane. You can't win from us being at 1 or 2 and just doing the Arthur Trehey classic. Uh, you can't use arcane against us. And we have poppers, so whenever we need to block, we have a popper. Uh, the yellow finals fighting spirits, they're easily pitchable. Like it's okay losing a bit of value into Dromai, and we still have spoils, so we can use spoils to clear board and build copper. Outland skirmish is kind of the same, where now it just becomes, whenever you just send your, one of your sword swings at a dragon, and that's value. Like they're just actually for a long time. I think Kassai has been the underdog into Dromai. And I think this list was a really good example at showing why she is not. Uh, I think it had a lot. It has a lot of answers to Dromai, and if Dromai wants to block, then sure, block with your dragons. I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
And I'm going to fatigue you if you want to block every single one I'm presenting, and then uh, if ever you let me have that many gold, I'll just raise and like actually apply board pressure to you. Like there's a lot of answers that you have just because you have that safety net of having 11 poppers. Now there was even a game where I had where I drew 4 hands in a row without popper, and like that's fine. That's I still won it, because then it the Dromai was knew I had 11 poppers at that point, and she still had to put board pressure. Like, what is Dromai gonna do? And she was on big dragon, so had less attack actions. Uh, it was just not a good thing for her. Like she still chipped damage because I didn't see any poppers for a while, but even then it was we were talking with them. I can't remember their name, but uh, it was tough for them. So um, I think this was solved drama, and unfortunately it came like too late, but
Yeah,
it's okay.
it's still in time for first week of PQ season.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I guess do we want to maybe touch on some changes you might make post Dromai in the new meta before we wrap it up? Any
Yeah,
things you think maybe cut, maybe add?
I think it's still broad strokes. Um, I think with Dromai leaving now, you have stuff that was historically, kind of pushed out by Dromai, like Riptide, Assassin. Um, like there's a lot of decks that were cast out of the meta by Dromai, and now that she's out, you're gonna have to tech for them, like Assassin, Riptide, stuff like that. Um,
I think to me, the deck that I am very concerned about going forward is Prism. I
yeah,
think that
that's the
deck
main one.
is like maybe the best deck in the format when Dromai leaves. Like the combo
Well,
Prism with like triple tome turns that like just sets up unclearable board state, I think is like really, really strong.
so that's
So
where I was going is like I was talking about Riptide Assassin, but one of
yeah,
the
you're just psyoping. Yeah,
decks.
yeah.
No, 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 no. I think those decks actually do gain a lot of stock, but I was saying like the deck that gained the most from Dromai leaving is Prism.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Prism had a like absurdly bad Dromai matchup, and some people would say, "Oh, she still had play and stuff," but like it was not good. It was not good. And now that Dromai is leaving, Prism gains a lot of stock. She's already a very scary combo deck, with Tome and Vestige build. Like, there's ways you can play around that. There's stuff like Time Snap Potion. I think Time Snap Potion basically solved the matchup. I'm not sure. I haven't tested it enough. It seems fine to at least break ALS loop. If they play Iris, then I feel good about it, to be honest. Um, yeah, I mean the only scary thing is ALS loop, and like having unclearable board state because of ALS loop.
See,
But
I don't know
it's
if I really like agree with that though. Like I think that Prism instead of
interesting.
like playing for ALS loop if you have time snap, if she just goes like triple tome and just makes like four angels, like I think that that's also just like pretty impossible to get over.
I mean, yeah, so the way Kassai plays into Prism a lot of the time is you deny Herald on hits. You deny Soul as much as possible. You play slow and grindy early game. Once she pops off and like does her thing, then you just kind of have to wait until she stops having Soul Gen. Time Snap just solves that though. Like I think one of Prism's main outs against Kassai is ALS looping, and like you once you break the ALS loop and are able to kill the angel that can recur the yellow, um, you just like I feel very favored at that spot. It's all about breaking that loop. So I don't know if it's a one-off time snap potion. I don't know if it's two, but I think that does make the cut. Obviously, we still have to test. Like this is super preliminary, um, but yeah, uh, Prism is a scary deck, and I think I don't know if she's gonna be the best deck in the format, but like you said, it's very scary. And she just lost one of her most horrendous matchups, so it's yeah, very scary. I think she's gonna definitely grab up some LL points during ProQuests. And then I guess I think the main change, or at least test I'm gonna do, is go back on Dominion. and see how it works with new sideboard and stuff like that. But I think Dominion was necessary for more fatiguey Guardian. Yeah, that's basically my maybe third response. But stuff like that, like it'll be minor. I don't think there's any like abnormal card that kind of make the cut. Maybe there is for Nats, I don't know. But for, at least for ProQuest, I think at least week one, I'm most likely gonna run this exact same list, and then we'll see after week one.
Yeah, maybe some poppers side out, get another Iron Song in the sideboard, something like that after Dromai goes, but I don't know what all we'll
You
really
don't
need.
run that many poppers into Prism though.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's what I mean. Like, we can just cut out some poppers, probably.
I mean, I think the only thing I cut, to be honest, is I cut the Down and Dirties and the yellow Findos. I put like red Findos or something so I can kind of get around the Herald of Judgment. And yeah, it's then there's 3 slots that you can kind of play with, and there's some, because of Dromai leaving, some decks lose stock, some gain stock. Like some of the numbers in the sideboard might change, but overall, like the main board is gonna be very, very, very much the same, and the sideboard is just gonna be a few tweaks.
I will say my other sleeper pick that I think maybe comes into the meta and does something is Arachne. Actually, I think Arachne's better than Azuri in this meta.
Deep if true.
Dude, I think that he still gets pushed out by Prism anyway, so he's probably not going to do anything. But I do think he's better than Azuri in this meta.
I think a very skilled Arachne player could do something, but yeah.
Dude, I don't know if you've ever played Kassai into good Arachnes, but like it is the most obnoxious thing ever, because what they do is they just swing Scale Peeler so your boots are off, and then they swing a contract.
No, yeah.
And then they swing a contract card, and just opt your Go Again card to the bottom, and so you just like don't draw Go Again consistently. Like you'll just draw hands without Go Again cards in them, and then you'll draw a hand of like 4 Go Again at the end of the game. It's like really annoying. I think the matchup's actually really hard. But
that'll happen. I don't feel. I think it into Arachne you kind of win or lose based on how you sideboard at the beginning of the game, and also I feel like a lot of like the thing is to remember with Arachne is like a lot of his on hits like actually don't matter.
Oh yeah, no, the on hit doesn't matter. It's just the opt that isn't on hit that matters.
Oh, I know, yeah. It's like the opt is annoying, but I will say a lot of the on hits that Arachne presents are like absolutely not. They're not threatening, and so if ever you want to have a pivot turn into him, it's like the easiest thing possible.
Yeah.
Unless he exactly has CNC, and like even then, it's like you have armor. You don't really use your armor against a lot of his things. I don't know. It's just like I understand the worry, but also.
I mean, I don't think it's really a worry. I don't think that there's a ton of good Arachnes, but I am saying, remember this for the future. If Arachne actually becomes good, I called it. All right. I think that he's actually in probably the best spot that he's ever been when Dromai leaves.
That's highly possible. I might agree with that one. Yeah. But yeah, let's not set up everyone. Arachne's still bad.
Yeah, I know. He's still probably not good enough.
Yeah, we're kidding.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's see. I don't think I missed anything. If obviously if anybody has questions, feel free to comment, or ping me on Twitter. My tool will be in the description. And yeah, I think we kind of touched all the bases.
Yep, I think we got everything down for Kassai. Going forward on the channel, a couple things. So first of all, me and Tyler are working on a Katsu deck tech, so that should be out sometime, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And then also, I think we can probably get actual Kassai gameplay videos out. Originally, the plan was to do that after Hartford, but then the channel got shut down for like a week, and then it was already RTN season, and we just didn't have time for it. So. Yeah,
the channel got shut down for a while. I don't know why YouTube was mean to us, and then RTN season was in full swing, so everything got delayed. But yeah, the plan is to start being more consistent on this channel. Like, it was just the Hartford into YouTube ban for some reason, into RTN, into LA. Yeah. Like, just nothing lined up, but we'll make sure to be more consistent. We're also having some team reorganization where like we might have some help for content and like more people might be interested in doing content, so we'll have more consistent content.
Yeah. And I guess let us know in the comments if there's anything else that you would like to see
Yep.
other than those two videos. We're always looking for things to do. But otherwise, I think that's going to be it from me and Pierre. See you guys in the next one.
Yeah, see you guys. Bye bye.